Hey guys, welcome back to Genealogy and Chronology. Today we are back to Middle Earth and we will be discussing about the complete timeline of Arda spanning over 61,000 years. I post two new videos each month concerning history, chronology and lore. Consider subscribing to my channel and following me on Reddit to find the high resolution copy of this chart. Please check out my Middle Earth series, which has 14 videos going over family trees of almost every major royal house from Tolkien's Legendarium, and also the complete timeline of the Palantiri, of the One Ring of Sauron, of the Silmarils of Fëanor, and the complete timeline of Lady Galadriel. Let's move on to today's topic. In the beginning, there was only Eru Ilúvatar, alone in his timeless halls before anything was created or anyone existed. Eru Ilúvatar created the Ainur, the holy ones, out of his thought. He spoke with the Ainur and propounded the themes of music to them, which they sang, but alone or in small numbers only. Eru convened all the Ainur to fashion a song in a manner which none had sung before. This magnificent music began and filled the timeless halls of Eru. However, soon Melkor introduced his themes of increasing power and glory, along with the theme of his own flame imperishable. Eru rose from his seat and stopped the theme by raising his left hand. The second theme began, similar yet different to the first theme, with increased power and beauty. The Ainur struggled again to match Melkor's discourse, and Manwë took the lead against Melkor, but failed. The Ainur stopped their singing, and Eru rose again from his seat and stopped the second theme by raising his right hand. The third theme began differently from the previous themes, with soft and sweet notes. The song gained power and depth and diverged into two different songs. One was filled with immeasurable sorrow, sung by the Ainur, and the other with loudness and pomp, sung by Melkor. The two themes contended with each other until the halls of Eru shook. Eru once again stood and stopped the music by raising both his hands. What the Ainur sang, including Melkor, was Ea, the material of the universe, and each one of their songs contributed to the making, history, and glory of the world that was to come. With the creation of Arda, 14 of the Ainur desired to enter Ea and prepare Arda for the coming of the children of Ilúvatar. These 14 Ainur are known as the Valar. With their arrival in Arda began the accounting of time in terms of Valian years. Before I discuss timelines any further, let me first classify the ages of Arda for ease of understanding. It is imperative to note that before the rising of the sun, each year was referred to as a Valian year, and there were a total of 5,000 Valian years in the timeline of Arda. While Tolkien does not mention which age the Valian years come under, I have shown Valian years 1 to 3500 as days before days, which was a term used to refer the first 3500 Valian years in Morgoth's Ring, Annals of Aman. I have shown the last 1500 Valian years as years of the trees, in parallel to Valian years 3501 to 5000. Please note that I have not used years of the lamps classification because it was never used by Tolkien as a classification, neither for any age nor for any certain number of Valian years. The term years of the lamps holds no canon relevance. Also, it is a common misconception that with the rising of the sun began the first age. In reality, the first age began with the awakening of elves in 1050 of the years of the trees, or in 4550th Valian year. So between years of the trees 1050 and 1500, it was not just years of the trees but also Valian years overlapping the first age. With the classification of ages out of the way, let's discuss the timeline of Arda from the beginning. Arda was crafted by the labors of all the Ainur, but Melkor came to Arda, claiming it for himself, which resulted in the Valar rising against Melkor. The power struggle between the Valar and Melkor in the first 1500 Valian years of Arda's history is known as the First War. There were numerous undocumented battles fought between the two forces. Melkor prevailed for a long time in Arda, destroying and undoing everything that the Valar did. When Tulkas learnt about the war, he descended into Arda in Valian year 1500, and hearing the laughter of Tulkas, Melkor fled beyond the walls of night. The war ended, but Arda was marred, and the world lay unfinished. Tulkas and Aule labored for many years to restore and heal Arda. With many labors, the Valar healed and restored the destructions caused by Melkor for 400 valiant years. In valiant year 1900, the Valar erected two lamps, Iluin and Ormal. Arda was still flat like a plate, and hence these lamps were placed in the north and south of continental Arda. The Valar also crafted an isle in the middle of Arda called Almarin, surrounded by the Great Lake. Because of its position, the island received the combined light of both the lamps, and this caused all things to grow fair on that isle. The Valar also chose this island as their abode. As for Melkor, he lurked in darkness beyond the walls of night. After long labors and restoring much of Arda, in valiant year 3400, Tulkas wedded Nessa and rested for many years. Seeing his chance, Melkor returned to Arda and raised the Iron Mountains in the north, where he built and erected his stronghold of Utumno. In valiant year 3450, Melkor came down from the Iron Mountains and destroyed the two lamps. Melkor also broke apart the lands and caused new seas to take place of the lands that were. The island of Almarin was also destroyed. The spring of Arda ended, and all living things started to rot and die. Then Yavanna put all living beings to sleep for the time being. The Valar then removed themselves to the western lands of Aman and raised the Pelori mountain range. Between valiant years 3450 and 3500, Yavanna sang into existence the two trees, Telperion and Laurelin. Telperion, which shone out silver, was considered a male, and Laurelin, which shone out golden, was considered a female. These two trees were grown on the hills of Ezeluhar, watered by the tears of Niena. The length of years remained the same, but the years were now accounted for as the years of the trees, starting with the first blooming of Telperion. In 1050 of years of the trees, 144 elves were awakened in Cuivienen on the eastern shores of the Sea of Helgar, and thus began the first stage. This part of Arda was still in darkness, as the lands east of the Pelori mountain range did not receive any light from the two trees. All living beings still lay in the sleep of Yavanna, save for the elves and dwarves, who also were awakened just some time after the awakening of the elves. In 1090 of the years of the trees, the Valar declared war upon Melkor as he started to afflict the newly awakened elves. The war lasted for 9 valiant years. The Valar laid siege upon Utumno and finally captured Melkor and brought him to Valinor. Melkor was cast into the halls of Mandos for 300 valiant years. Sauron, who was Melkor's lieutenant, evaded capture. After spending 300 valiant years in captivity, Melkor was finally released from the halls of Mandos in 1400 of the years of the trees. He envied the elves, because of whom he was captured in the first place. In 1495 of the years of the trees, Melkor killed King of the Noldor, Finwë, and stole Fëanor's Silmarils, and also destroyed the two trees with the help of Ungoliant. With the destruction of the two trees, there was no source of any light save of the stars. The Valar then sent two vessels in the sky, one carrying a fiery fruit from the Laurelin, which came to be known as the sun, and the other carrying a shining flower from Telperion, which came to be known as the moon. The men were also awakened with the rising of the sun. Thus began the second spring of Arda and the beginning of the years of the sun. After the rising of the sun and the moon and the coming of the Noldor to Beleriand, the conflict between Morgoth and the elves intensified, with numerous battles known as the Battles of Beleriand. Finally, at the request of Eärendil, the host of the west came to Middle-earth and defeated Morgoth. This time he was thrown out of Ea into the endless void. Following the capture of Morgoth and the conclusion of the War of Wrath, the Valar summoned the elves to return to Valinor. Most elves departed from the blessed realm, save for few. As for the descendants of the Edain, who assisted the Valar in war, a new isle, Numenor, was raised in the western seas between the blessed realm and Middle-earth, because the lands of Beleriand were destroyed and sank beneath the seas during War of Wrath. The first stage ended with the conclusion of War of Wrath, The Second Age began and Numenor prospered for 3 millennia. Initially, the kings of Numenor were friends with the elves, but in later days, the Numenorians grew proud of themselves and distanced themselves from the ways of their fathers. Sauron was captured by the last king of Numenor, but Sauron rose to become the king's advisor and was the primary reason for the downfall of Numenor. Following the downfall of Numenor, Elendil, who was the descendant of Numenorian royal house through a female branch, came to Middle-earth and established his realms in exile along with his sons. Sauron returned also, and this time the elves and the men formed an alliance which resulted in the defeat of Sauron and the deaths of Elendil and Gil-galad. The realms in exile split into two independent kingdoms upon Isildur's death. The line of Isildur inherited Arnor, whereas the line of Anarion inherited Gondor. The One Ring was lost, both realms prospered for a millennia, following which Sauron began to stir evil once again. The line of kings failed both in north and south by the end of second millennia. With the One Ring rediscovered, Sauron revealed himself once again. The task of destroying the One Ring was given to Frodo, and with him went the Fellowship of the Ring. The One Ring was destroyed by chance or by fate, and Sauron was defeated once and for all. The time of elves ended in Middle-earth with the end of the Third Age. Aragorn was crowned king of the reunited kingdom, and he set his realms in order. Aragorn reigned for 122 years and died in the year 120 of the Fourth Age. His son Eldarion succeeded him as the second king of the reunited kingdom. Tolkien mentioned in one of his letters in 1958 that after the Third Age ended, the length of each following age diminished by few centuries. He also assumed that it was 6,000 years before our times that the events of the Lord of the Rings took place, and we were currently living in either 5th, 6th, or 7th age. Later in 1960, Tolkien wrote in another letter that we were in 1960 of the 7th age, indicating that this age follows the Christian reckoning. So for all you Tolkien fans out there, this is 2023 of the 7th age. From the beginning of the time to the end of the Third Age, Tolkien's legendarium spans over 54,962 solar years. If you add the 6,000 years time gap that Tolkien mentioned in his letters between our time and the events of Lord of the Rings, the total timeline of Tolkien's legendarium is almost 61,000 solar years. I hope you all like this video of the complete timeline of Arda. Be sure to join me next month as I will discuss another interesting topic from Middle-earth. Starting next week, you can order any one of my charts from my website genealogyandchronology.com. You can watch the Middle-earth playlist which has 14 videos going over every major royal house from Middle-earth and also the complete chronology of the One Ring, the Silmarils and the Palantiri. All my charts are freely available on Reddit and Twitter. If you like my work, consider supporting me on Patreon, or you can buy me a coffee by scanning this code. Please like the video and share it with your Tolkien friends and family. To view the high resolution copy of this chart, please visit my Reddit. Thank you.